Hey, I'm Lana from Lana Glowshot Art, and in this video, we'll be unboxing the October 2024 Sketchbox. This box is all about playing with ink in some fun, creative ways. Ready? Let's go. The surface in this month's box is the Hanamule Agave watercolor paper, which is a wonderfully sturdy paper for a variety of wet media, and it will be perfect for our Koh-i-Noor Rapidograph Universal Black ink. We also have a size 8 round King Art premium white nylon brush and the Art Alternative 2-Well cupcake palette. Here I am swatching the Rapidograph Universal ink right out of the container. And I'm also playing around with the smooth marks that my King Art round brush can make. Now I'm exploring a variety of washes by adding more water into my ink. And sometimes it requires quite a bit of water to actually make these washes appear lighter. So be sure to take your time to explore the variety of shades that you can make by mixing different ratios of ink and water in your cupcake palette. The prompt this month is silhouette, and as you probably already know, silhouette refers to the outline or the general shape of an object in a painting. And usually there isn't a whole lot of detail inside this shape when we're talking about it as a silhouette. Here I will be painting silhouettes using 3 different washes and using these different values to create depth. My first wash is very heavily diluted ink. In fact, it's mostly water with just the tiniest bit of ink, and I'm going to be painting bamboo. The silhouette of bamboo is a long vertical stalk that's segmented a bit, and then little leaves sticking off at random. Here I have created several silhouettes of bamboo in a light wash. I'm going to allow it to dry completely, and then I'm going to come in with a slightly darker wash. This darker wash over the top of the lighter wash is creating depth and dimension because the lighter wash has less contrast with the background, and so it fades out just a little bit. This is called atmospheric perspective. Also, I am painting these bamboo stalks right over the top of the lighter ones, and that overlapping is also creating more depth. After this mid-value wash is dried completely, I come in with my pure ink and I paint that same silhouette of the bamboo. Notice that each one of my bamboo stalks is a little bit different, and this is creating interest and variety. Not every single one of my leaves works out exactly the way I planned, but with ink where you can't really erase it, you've got to just go with it. Don't become paralyzed when you make a mistake. Instead, adapt and adjust your approach and make it work. And once you have a lot of different elements on your page, no one is ever going to notice that teeny tiny little leaf that didn't go perfectly. Next, we have the Kuretake Brush Writer in pink. This brush pen requires a little bit of special attention to get it going. Remove the top, then take that yellow ring out and put the top back on, securing it tightly. You can give it a little shake to move the ink around and then press the bladder and start squeezing the ink into the bristles. This can take a little bit of time, so be patient. But once you see the ink coming into the bristles, it's time to go. Wow, look at that vibrant color. You can create a variety of different beautiful marks with this brush pen. If you move slowly, you'll be able to keep your mark a little bit tighter, whereas moving a little bit faster might result in a dry brush mark. This pen can also be diluted with water. You can dip the brush right into water or into your ink, or you can add the water separately to create a diluted wash as I'm doing here. Let's play around with the idea of silhouettes as we explore the different capabilities of this brush writer. Here I am going to put in mounds of leaves, and I'm particularly paying attention to creating an interesting shape. So I am creating several different blocks of leaves, and I'm not just creating basic ovals. I'm letting this shape be really organic and interesting, and I'm leaning into the capabilities of the brush to do that. After I have several bunches of leaves assembled the way that I want to make up the tree, I'm going to allow the ink to dry completely, and then I'm going to add a trunk to the tree using my ink. Resist the urge to create a boring basic rectangle and instead add some curves and bumps and create a really interesting silhouette with the trunk. Then take this large chunk that you created for the trunk and pull it into smaller strokes as you connect it to the leaves in small branches. Keep in mind that if you connect it into wet paint, you'll get that wet on wet approach, which could be exactly what you're looking for. For the second tree, I'm using a slightly different approach, but I'm still prioritizing shape and silhouette. Instead of drawing with the brush pen first, I'm coming in and drawing the shapes that I want to create with the leaves with water. And this can be pure clean water, or this could be a heavily diluted wash that you use so that you can see the silhouettes a little easier and play around with the pink and the gray ink mixing. Then begin to drop your brush writer ink right into these wet blobs. You'll get this really fun tie-dye wet on wet effect, and as the ink dilutes into the water, you'll be able to see some of those lighter tones that you can create. If you want to lean even more into the wet on wet approach, you can drop a little bit of ink along the bottom of these shapes to create that sense of light falling on the tree from above. And then again, just like we did before, complete the tree with some straight black ink that explores really interesting shapes in the trunk and the branches. And finally, we have the Pentel Arts Micro Brush Tip Sign Pen in gray. The color of this micro brush is a lighter gray than the black of our ink, so it's going to be ideal for creating atmospheric perspective and depth in our artwork. And with this teeny tiny little brush head, it is a wonderful tool for rendering fine details. Compare the gray lines to those from the pink brush writer, and you'll notice how delicate and tiny your details can get with this very precise tool. Let's use the micro brush pen to render some trees. This is actually a technique that I do in watercolor all the time, and it works really well with the ink that comes out of these brush pens. Begin with a vertical line and keep this line fairly thin, but don't worry about it being perfectly straight. It actually works better if it's a little wobbly. It makes it feel more realistic. Then I usually begin at the top, and then I just pat the brush onto the paper a little bit randomly in horizontal strokes. I make sure that I'm leaving space for the light to come through and that each branch is a little bit different. As I progress towards the bottom of that vertical line that I created, my branches are getting bigger, but there's still that space and that organic character to the tree all the way through. In addition to trying out some of these little pine trees, you can play around with other elements you might see in a landscape, like thin, fine grasses, flowers, and other little details. Now we'll put all of these tools and strategies together to create an ink landscape. In an ink landscape, the general rules that I am using are working from light to dark and working from those objects further away in the background towards those objects that are closer. So the first thing that I begin with is a wet on wet approach of a mountain in the background. And I want this to be really far back and really light, so I'm dropping in a very diluted ink wash into the water shape that I painted. While I'm waiting for this mountain range to dry, I'm sketching in some organic trunks and just a few branches for some trees in the foreground. And I'll connect this trunk and branch system with smaller branches once I have painted in my leafy pink shapes. Now that that mountain range in the background is completely dry, I can come over the top with a wet on wet approach without worrying about the foreground mountains bleeding into the background mountains. For these mountains that are a little bit further forward, I'm dropping in darker ink so that I'm creating that atmospheric perspective that we practiced with the bamboo earlier in this lesson. While this mountain range is drying, I'm going to come in and design those leaf shapes for my tree. And I'm still thinking about the prompt silhouette while I do this. What shape should I use to represent these chunks of leaves that would be interesting and dynamic? I'm going to apply these with my brush writer, and then I'm coming in after they're all on the paper and softening some of the edges with a little bit of clean water. This smaller tree is meant to be in the background. So to create that depth, I'm doing a wet on wet effect with the water shapes that we practiced earlier, and then dropping in the pink color with my brush writer. This softer effect will create some of that atmospheric perspective with these trees. As I finish up this piece, I'm bouncing around quite a bit, avoiding those wet areas and allowing them to dry. I eventually transitioned to the Pentel Micro Brush pen to create some of those trees that we practiced in the background. I'm imagining there's a lake or a body of water here, so I'm using horizontal strokes to create that sense of water and depth. I felt that the pink needed to be balanced a little bit, so I finished off this painting with a pink sun or a pink moon. You get to decide which one it is, and a little bit of a reflection in the water. This circle silhouette helps balance some of the more organic shapes and to balance the color throughout. And now this piece is complete. I hope you learned a ton about working with ink and creating fun, imaginative landscapes. We can't wait to see what you create, so be sure to use the hashtag SketchboxOctober when you post your work online. For more unboxing videos and tutorials, you can check out our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.